In the bustling coastal town of Seacrest Bay, where the golden rays of late afternoon shimmered across the restless waves that crashed against the shore with a rhythmic roar that echoed through the cliffs like a primal chant, and the air carried the salty tang of the ocean mingled with the faint sweetness of blooming sea roses that lined the cliffs like a fragrant garland swaying in the breeze, their petals trembling with the pulse of life. The year 2025 brought a sudden upheaval to a household teetering on the edge of discord, their lives a fragile thread woven with threads of trust, betrayal, and the faint glimmer of hope that flickered like a lighthouse in the fog, a beacon struggling against the encroaching darkness that threatened to swallow them whole with its relentless tide. Nestled along a rugged shoreline dotted with weathered fishing cottages, their timbers creaking with the weight of time like the bones of the earth groaning under the sea's embrace, and modern beachfront villas, their white walls gleaming under the sun like polished pearls reflecting the skies' endless expanse, Seacrest Bay was a vibrant retreat where the rhythm of the tides mingled with the hum of daily life, a symphony of nature and human endeavor that pulsed through the streets like a heartbeat, a place where the beauty of the sea masked the undercurrents of hidden desires, unspoken tensions, and that quiet pulse of secrets that simmered beneath the surface like a hidden current waiting to surge with destructive force, a force that could reshape the very fabric of their existence. At the center of this brewing storm was Marina Holt, a 33-year-old marine biologist with deep blue eyes that hid a well of unvoiced worries, their depths a reflection of the ocean's mysteries that mirrored her soul with every ripple, her life unraveling after years of a marriage strained by long hours apart that stretched the days into eternity, and a growing emotional gap that left her heart adrift like a boat without a rudder, tossed by the waves of neglect that battered her spirit, seeking comfort with her sister, Lyle Hart, a steady presence in the chaos that threatened to overwhelm her like a tidal wave crashing against the rocks. Lila, a 35-year-old teacher with a calm demeanor that belied her own struggles, her voice a soothing balm against the storm that raged within her breast, lived in a cottage overlooking the bay, its windows framing the endless sea like a painting of hope that never faded, its glass catching the light like a prism, her home a sanctuary filled with the quiet solace of shared memories that lingered like a gentle tide washing the shore with every breath. Marina's husband, Caleb Holt, a 35-year-old dock worker with a rugged charm that drew eyes like a magnet pulling iron, and a dedication to his labor that consumed his days like a relentless tide that never ceased, remained in their beachfront villa, its wooden deck a testament to their fading connection that eroded with every wave that lapped against the pilings, a structure weakened by time, a stark contrast to Lila's husband, Owen Hart, a 36-year-old accountant with a reserved nature that masked his own restlessness, his quiet presence a shadow to Marina's unease that grew with each passing hour, like a shadow lengthening at dusk, a darkness that crept closer with every tick of the clock. The turning point came on July 24, 2025, at 9:57 East, the current moment as the town hushed under the night sky, the air thick with the scent of salt and the promise of rain that hung heavy like a shroud when Marina, returning from a late research dive with her mind still on the ocean's depths, her body weary from the cold embrace of the sea that clung to her skin like a second self, uncovered a secret that would shatter her world into fragments, a break that would ripple through the fabric of her existence like a crack in the earth splitting wide. Marina's life had been a dance of science and solitude, her marriage to Caleb a partnership built on shared love for the sea that had once been a bond as strong as the tides that shaped the coast, a force that molded their days, now eroded over time into a barren shore stripped of life, its sands barren and cold, his increasing shifts at the docks a wall she couldn't cross, its bricks made of exhaustion that weighed on his shoulders like a burden too heavy to bear, and fleeting conversations that slipped through her fingers like sand carried away by the tide, leaving nothing but emptiness in their wake. Their villa, once filled with the sound of waves that lulled them to sleep like a cradle sung by the sea, and the warmth of their laughter that filled the rooms with light like a beacon in the night, had ground quiet, the creak of the deck a lonely echo in the night, that pressed against her chest like a weight she couldn't lift, a reminder of the love that had slipped away like water through a sieve, leaving only the echo of what once was, a ghost that haunted the halls. On that fateful evening, as the clock struck 9:57 east, aligning with 2:57 het, the moon rising over Seacrest Bay, casting silver reflections on the water that danced with the light like a mirror to her soul, its glow a cold comfort, Marina stepped into the villa, her wetsuit still damp with the ocean's case, her hair tangled with seaweed that clung like memories she couldn't shake, and moved to charge her phone, her fingers brushing Caleb's device left carelessly on the table, its screen glowing with temptation like a siren's call that lured her closer. The sight that met her eyes, a series of loving text messages between Caleb and Vanessa Reed, a 34-year-old coworker from the docks, with a flirty tone that dripped with honey, and shared inside jokes that hinted at intimacy, their words a betrayal etched in digital ink that burned her eyes like acid, a wound that seared her froze her in place, her breath catching like a wave against the shore, her heart pounding with the force of a storm that raged within, a tempest that threatened to consume her. The air thickened with betrayal, a spilled coffee mug staining the table with a dark pool that spread like her pain, a stain that grew with every second, a faded photo of their wedding day on the mantel, a silent accuser that stared with unseeing eyes, its edges curling with time like a leaf in autumn, a relic of a past that mocked her. Marina's cry broke the silence, her voice raw with shock that tore from her throat like a gull's cry carried on the wind, her hands trembling as she read the words of affection that cut deeper than any tide, a wound that bled with every line that scrolled past her vision, a hemorrhage of trust. The aftermath unleashed a flood of pain that rippled through Seacrest Bay like a storm surge, its waves crashing against the shore with unrelenting force that shook the foundations of the town, a tremor that reached into every home. Marina fled to Lila's cottage, her mind replaying the messages with every step that faltered on the sandy path, the dank sand clinging to her feet like a burden she couldn't shake, her thoughts a whirlwind of pain and disbelief that clouded her vision like a fog rolling in from the sea, a mist that obscured her path, while Caleb, struck by guilt that weighed on his shoulders, like an anchor dragging him down into the depths, admitted the affair had begun during late shifts when the docks grew quiet, a silence that bred intimacy, evolving into a bond he couldn't break, a confession that fell from his lips like ashes scattering in the wind, carried away by the breeze that mourned with her. Vanessa, caught in the crossfire of their unraveling lives, sent a curt apology that rang hollow like an empty shell washed ashore, defending their connection as a workplace comfort that had spiraled beyond control, her words a shield against the storm that threatened to engulf her, a flimsy barrier against the tide of wrath. Marina sought refuge with Lila, whose cottage became a haven where the sea's murmur offered fleeting peace, a sound that could not still the tumult within her breast, her tears mixing with the salt air that clung to her skin like a second layer, a salty shroud that wrapped her in sorrow. Meanwhile, Caleb pleaded through calls laced with regret, his voice breaking with every plea that fell on deaf ears, a sound lost to the wind moving to a fisherman's shack where the cold solitude mirrored his isolation, a prison of his own making, his apologies lost in the wind that carried them out to sea, unanswered and adrift like a lost ship tossed by the waves. Months later, Marina learned through dock gossip that drifted on the evening breeze like a whisper on the wind that Caleb and Vanessa had continued their affair in secret, meeting at a seaside cafe where the waves hid their whispers from prying ears, a revelation that reignited her anguish like a smoldering ember fanned to flame, a fire that consumed her ano, while Lila confessed her own husband's flirtations with a colleague, his actions a mirror to Marina's hurt, their shared sorrow a bond that tightened with every shared tear that fell to the floor, a pool of grief that deepened. Their sisterly bond deepened in the forge of their shared grief, a connection tempered by the fire of their pain that burned bright like a lighthouse in the storm, but tensions flared as Marina's unresolved feelings for Caleb clashed with Lila's advice to move on, a rift that tested their alliance with every heated exchange that filled the room with tension that crackled like lightning across the sky. By 2030, Marina and Lila shared Lila's cottage, its windows a frame for their healing that struggled to take root in the rocky soil of their hurts, each finding new love that offered fragile solace, a balm for their wounds that barely covered the scars that remained like etchings on stone, their voices a tentative harmony that trembled in the air like a bird's first song after a storm, a sound that struggled to fill the silence that lingered like a ghost haunting the halls, a spectre that refused to leave, while Caleb and Vanessa built a strained life in a rented flat overlooking the docks, their relationship shadowed by guilt that hung like a cloud over their heads, a storm that never broke, their days marked by quiet tension that stretched between them like a taut rope ready to snap. In 2100, descendants unearthed Caleb's logs, their pages withered by salt and time like the hull of an old ship battered by the sea, revealing an emotional journey tied to Seacrest's maritime lore, a narrative that spanned generations with every entry that turned like a page in the wind, their legacy, a thread in the fabric of the bay that wove through time with every stitch. By 3000, a descendant, Coral Holt, led a healing movement in a futuristic Seacrest Bay, where beachfront etches blended with crystalline spires that pierced the sky like needles of light, a beacon in the darkness, fulfilling a legacy of reconciliation with a heart heavy with the weight of the past, its burden a silent companion that walked beside her like a shadow cast by the moon, while echoes of the affair lingered, shaping family dynamics across dimensions that stretched beyond the horizon like an endless sea that never rests.